Have you ever done something so routine, so familiar, that you never stopped to question it, only to realize years later it's been quietly working against you? If you're over 60 and still touching yourself the same way you did decades ago, this might be one of those things. It might feel harmless, even comforting. But what if I told you that one small, almost invisible habit could be silently sabotaging your circulation, draining your vitality, and weakening the very bond you have with your partner? Hi, I'm Dr. Mohit Kara. I'm a urologist and men's health specialist with over 30 years of experience helping older adults reclaim their energy, restore their intimacy, and feel fully alive again, both physically and emotionally. And what I'm about to share with you might surprise you, because after working with thousands of men over the age of 60, I've uncovered a pattern subtle but powerful that too many men overlook. They think it's normal, harmless, even healthy. But in truth, it's a hidden culprit that's eroding the very systems keeping your body young and your relationships fulfilling. Stick with me for just a few minutes, and I'll reveal exactly what this mistake is, why it's far more damaging than you think, and how to reverse the effects naturally, safely, and with noticeable results in as little as 7 days. And near the end, I'll share one simple change you can make tonight that might just reignite not only your blood flow, but your confidence in the bedroom. But first, if you find content like this helpful, go ahead and tap that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. This channel is here to serve men like you, men who aren't giving up on living fully, no matter what age the calendar says. And if what I'm saying already resonates with you, type 1 in the comments to let me know you're with me. If you'd like to hear something different, type 0 and tell me what you'd like me to cover next. This is your journey. I'm just here to guide you along the way. Let's begin with a truth few people talk about, especially as we age. Most people believe that with age, the body becomes dull, desensitized, less responsive. But what if I told you the opposite is true? After 60, your body becomes more sensitive. Not less. Not emotionally, but physically. Your nervous system hormones and blood flow become more delicate, more reactive, which means that even the smallest habits, especially the ones you repeat regularly, can have a surprisingly powerful impact. And that includes how you touch yourself. Now, I know this isn't a comfortable topic, but discomfort is a small price to pay for clarity, health, and long-lasting intimacy. Over the years, I've spoken with countless men who've reported seemingly unrelated symptoms: cold feet, low energy, disinterest in sex, a nagging feeling of disconnection from their partners. They chalked it all up to aging. But aging isn't the full story. You see, when you stimulate yourself the same way you did in your 30s or 40s, using high-pressure fast motion or emotional detachment, you may not feel any pain. But your body feels the toll. Slowly, silently, it begins to push back. That means less sensitivity, duller pleasure, weaker arousal, and a frustrating sense that something just isn't working like it used to. That's your body's cry, not in words, but through sensation. The pelvic region, like your heart, thrives on healthy circulation. But when you overwhelm it with friction force or disconnection, the blood flow starts to fade. Nerves grow tired, tissue loses vitality, and it doesn't stop there. Many of my patients tell me their emotional intimacy has started to fade too, that the spark in their relationship has dimmed. That closeness now feels like a distant memory. They blame age, but in truth it often begins with how we treat ourselves, our own bodies. It's not just physical, it's not just sexual, it's emotional. And the beautiful truth: this isn't permanent. Your body isn't broken. You just need to relearn how to care for it. And it starts with awareness. But here's where things get even more fascinating. When we talk about masturbation, most people think it's purely physical, a way to relieve tension, a private act with no real consequence. But under the surface, something much deeper is happening, especially as we age. Let me explain. Each time you overstimulate, especially with strong grip, fast motion, or even a mechanical device, your brain responds with a surge of dopamine. That's the feel-good chemical, the reward hormone. And for a brief moment, everything feels fantastic. But like any high, what goes up must come down. Immediately after that dopamine spike, your body releases another hormone, prolactin. This is the cool-down hormone, the one that signals your system to rest, reset, and essentially shut off arousal. For younger men, this hormonal shift is brief and recovery is quick. But for men over 60, the crash is deeper. The recovery is slower. And if this pattern happens frequently, say 2 or 3 times a week, it begins to wear on your system. Not just your body, but your brain's ability to regulate desire, energy, and connection. Think about that. Something as common and unnoticed as overstimulating during masturbation could be disrupting your brain chemistry, your hormone balance, and your mood. It's no wonder so many older men feel depleted, disconnected, and emotionally flat afterward. The pleasure is short-lived. But the aftermath, it lingers. This isn't about shame. It's about strategy. You've been using the same playbook for decades, but your body has changed, and it's time your habits did too. Now, if you're still here, it tells me something. You care about your health, your energy, your relationship, and you're open to learning something new, even if it challenges what you've always believed. That's powerful, that's rare, and that's where change begins. So let's move forward. In the next part of this series, I'll walk you through what you can do tonight. Yes, tonight, to begin restoring healthy circulation, increasing sensitivity, and reawakening the emotional and physical connection that might have faded over time. It's not about quitting. It's about evolving. And I'll show you exactly how. But before we move on, take a moment. Has this made you think differently about your body? About your habits? About the quiet messages your system might be trying to send you? If so, drop a yes in the comments. Or just type the number 1. That tells me this message is reaching the right people. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next part, where we'll dive into the practical steps to heal, reconnect, and thrive again. You're not broken. You're awakening, and the journey back to full, vibrant, connected living. It starts right here. In the previous section, we talked about how overstimulation, especially the kind that relies on intensity and repetition, can gradually wear down the body's natural sensitivity and response. It's not just about feeling less in the moment. It's about your body adapting in ways that ultimately leave you more numb, less connected, and emotionally distant. Now let's go deeper into what really happens beneath the surface. Over time, this pattern doesn't just dull your physical reactions, it quietly chips away at your emotional well-being too. It's not always obvious at first. It can start with small shifts, less motivation in the mornings, a quiet sense of distance in your relationship, or even a vague emotional flatness that you just can't explain. But physiologically, something real is happening. Testosterone. The hormone that supports your drive, energy, and sense of masculinity begins to decline. The production of nitric oxide, a molecule that plays a critical role in keeping your blood vessels open and your circulation healthy, starts to slow. And even oxytocin, the bonding hormone that helps you feel emotionally close to others, can begin to drop. So now the very act that's supposed to bring relief, joy, and a sense of connection ends up leaving you feeling the opposite, tired, unmotivated, emotionally disconnected, and sometimes even more alone than before. This isn't some abstract theory. I've seen it firsthand. I've had patients, good men, strong men, sit across from me and say things like, "Doc, I don't know what's wrong. I just feel numb. Like I'm watching life go by, but not really living it." They often assume it's just part of getting older, but the truth is their bodies have become addicted to intensity. That high-speed, high-pressure stimulation trains the nervous system to crave extremes, so much so that natural, gentle touch no longer registers the same way. The system stops responding unless it's overstimulated. And beneath that craving for sensation, there's a nervous system starving for balance. Now, here's the part that even surprised me when I first started noticing it in my patients, when they made simple, mindful changes to how they stimulated themselves and when they began focusing on restoring rhythm to their habits, breath to their body, and intention to their intimacy. Something remarkable began to happen. They started to feel alive again, not just in the bedroom, but in their everyday life. They reported waking up with more energy, sleeping better at night, and feeling more emotionally open with their partners. Their eyes looked brighter, their voices steadier, and perhaps most important, they started to feel more like themselves again. That shift didn't come from a pill or a procedure. It came from relearning how to relate to their own bodies with respect, with patience, and with a sense of curiosity. But there's a layer to all this that most doctors never talk about. A layer that doesn't show up on any blood test or brain scan. And that's the emotional toll these habits can take. Because while the body often suffers in silence, the heart breaks in ways we can't always see. I've always believed that behind every physical symptom, there's an emotional story waiting to be heard, especially when it comes to intimacy, and especially after 60. Most men who come to see me aren't asking for help with masturbation or testosterone levels. They're not worried about hormones, at least not at first. What brings them in is something more vague, but far more powerful. They come in saying things like, "Something's missing. I don't feel the same with my wife. I just don't feel connected anymore, but I can't explain why." And more often than not, that something they're missing is connection. Connection with their partner, connection with themselves, and sometimes connection with life itself. I remember one patient vividly, a retired high school principal in his early 70s, a strong, thoughtful man who sat across from me and said quietly, "Doc, I don't feel like a man anymore. My wife and I don't touch like we used to. I go to bed beside her every night, but somehow, I still feel alone." He wasn't embarrassed about his aging body. What pained him most was the growing distance between them, that silent emotional drift, that feeling of being next to someone, but worlds apart, and having no idea how to bridge that gap. So I asked him gently, "How have you been connecting with yourself lately?" At first he looked confused. Then he hesitated, and finally admitted that he'd been using porn regularly, often, with headphones always in secret. It wasn't something he was proud of, but he said it felt easier than facing the awkwardness between him and his wife. Easier than risking rejection. Easier than dealing with the uncertainty of trying to initiate intimacy after so many years of silence. And that right there, that's the emotional consequence almost no one talks about. When self-pleasure becomes a form of escape rather than a pathway to connection, it reinforces the very isolation we're trying to avoid. It drives a wedge, not just in the bedroom, but in the heart. The more we retreat into private, disconnected habits built on pressure and urgency, the harder it becomes to reach out to, open up, to be truly seen by another person. This isn't about shame. It's about awareness. Because the way we relate to our own bodies often mirrors the way we relate to others. And if our personal habits are rushed, hidden, or emotionally disconnected, then it's no surprise that our relationships start to feel the same, distant, uncertain, and hollow. But the good news is this: it's not too late to change. You don't have to give anything up. You just have to reshape how you engage with yourself and with those you love. I've seen it happen. I've guided men through it. And in the next section, I'll show you exactly how to begin that shift with 3 clear, practical steps that can help you rekindle not just your sensitivity and circulation, but your sense of emotional closeness and vitality. If you've made it this far, and if any of this resonates with you, take a moment and type the number 1 in the comments. It lets me know you're here and that this message is reaching someone who needs it. Now let's continue with part 4. The 3-step fix a new approach to self-pleasure after 60 that can restore energy, intimacy, and connection without guilt, shame, or giving anything up. In the last section, we uncovered the quiet warning signs the body gives when it's out of balance, when habits once meant for relief begin to silently wear down both physical vitality and emotional connection. Now let's take a closer look at those signs, how they show up in everyday life, and why so many of us miss them until it's almost too late. The truth is, most of us were never taught how to truly listen to our bodies. In fact, many of us were conditioned to brush things off, push through the discomfort, ignore the fatigue, pretend everything's fine until the discomfort becomes impossible to ignore. That's especially true when it comes to circulation. We often think of poor circulation as a heart issue, but in reality it's a full-body concern. Every cell in your body, your brain, your muscles, your skin, even your sense of touch relies on healthy blood flow. And when that flow starts to weaken, it doesn't just affect your energy. It changes how you think, how you move, and how you experience intimacy. After the age of 60, these changes can creep in, so gradually they're easy to dismiss. One of the first and most common symptoms I hear from patients is a heavy kind of tiredness. Not just feeling sleepy, but a deep, bone-deep fatigue that makes simple tasks feel like a chore. For many, just getting out of bed in the morning feels heavier than it used to. That kind of exhaustion. It's often the first quiet signal that something inside needs attention. Others tell me their hands or feet are always cold even when the weather is warm. That's a clear sign your blood isn't moving as freely or as efficiently as it once did. And then come the more intimate signs. Things like reduced sensitivity during touch, fewer or weaker morning erections, or feeling like the body just doesn't respond the way it used to. Now here's the key point. These aren't just random signs of aging. They are your body trying to tell you something softly at first, hoping you'll notice. They are gentle but important requests for change. Some patients describe changes in their skin feeling thinner, drier, or more sensitive to pressure. Others mention numbness or tingling in their fingers and toes, especially after sitting too long. And yet so many chalk it up to just getting older. But common doesn't mean normal. I remember a 68-year-old veteran who sat across from me in my office one afternoon. He looked me straight in the eye and said I thought this was just what happens when you get old. But as we dug deeper, it became clear it wasn't just aging. It was the result of years of overstimulation using a tight grip, intense pressure, and rapid arousal several times a week without ever giving his body a chance to rest or reset. When we worked together to adjust his routine to slow things down, ease the pressure, and give his body time to recover, something remarkable happened. Not only did his circulation improve, but so did his mood. His clarity returned. His ability to connect with his partner deepened. And he told me something I'll never forget. I didn't realize how numb I had become physically and emotionally until I started to feel again. That right there is what makes this journey worth it. If you've noticed these kinds of changes, cold hands, reduced arousal, numbness, or just a dull sense of disconnection, please don't ignore them. These aren't signs of failure. They're signals, messages from your body that it wants to heal, that it's capable of finding balance again if you give it the care and patience it's been quietly asking for. But here's something that might surprise you. Over the years, I've learned that these signs aren't only physical. They point to something deeper, something many people never realize is missing until they get it back. That missing piece is alignment. When your habits are out of sync with your body's true needs, it affects more than your physical state. It disrupts your emotional rhythm, your self-worth, and your sense of purpose. That's why this isn't just about fixing a symptom. It's about reclaiming your connection to something more powerful and meaningful. In our final step, we're going to talk about that deeper reconnection, how to move beyond just functioning and toward feeling alive again. Because this isn't just a conversation about sex or even about circulation. It's about dignity, vitality, and remembering that no matter your age, your ability to feel love and be loved is still beautifully intact. So stay with me. In the next and final part, I'll show you why this healing journey is ultimately about more than biology. It's about rebuilding the bridge to your purpose, your intimacy, and your sense of worth, and why that matters more now than ever.